Minglawa, welcome to MITV Special Talk Show Perspectives. For this show, we have invited the guest of speaker, Sea Ue Chen, who is a counselor of Myanmar Press Council and also the chairman of E-Commerce Association of Myanmar and the vice chairman of Myanmar Digital Economy Association of UMFCCI. Ue Chen has also worked in the United Kingdom and Singapore as a professional in banking and financial sectors for more than 15 years. Minglawa Sia.
Minglawa.
Thank you very much for joining us in this show. So for today, we are going to discuss about the growth policies on the dying. So for this topic, what do you mean by growth policies?
Well, when we talk about growth, growth as a country, we're talking about the GDP per capita. Yeah, so the whole country GDP divided by the population, then you got the GDP per capita. So when you talk about growth policies, we are trying to increase the GDP per capita of a country, which means the GDP per capita is probably the one and only measurement of wealth, how wealthy the country is. Yeah, so we are, by increasing the GDP per capita, you're trying to make the country richer as well. So growth policies are oriented towards increasing the GDP per capita. Right? So typical growth policies that we have been doing, the whole world has been doing like 10, 20 years ago, is like liberalization, international trade, privatization, right? And then joining the world organizations such as WTO or ASEAN or that type of organization, plus just now talking about privatization, globalization, deregulation. So all these things combined, the purpose of it is to increase the GDP per capita at the end of the day. So that's the meaning of the growth policies.
Oh. Thank you for your explanation, sir. So how has the economic environment changed?
Yeah, recently in the past a couple of years, since a couple of years before the COVID times, right, we have the economic environment or the policies have sort of reversed from, growth policies to sort of like anti-growth. Yeah, anti-growth, anti-team, anti-organization, right, or anti-immigration. Yeah, plus pro-regulations, more and more regulations in place, plus pro-self-interest, your own interest. For example, Donald Trump, U.S. president, he campaigned on the basis of America first. Yeah, the rest of the world doesn't really matter. So America first. Yeah, that type of thing. So Britain itself, they get out EU, Brexit. Right, so that is like they try to not to be part of the global community. They are trying to be a little bit against the international trade as well. For example, in U.S. alone in 2021, they have imposed about 12,000 new regulations. Yeah, related to that. And in terms of country-wise, also they in general, the rich country has become more anti-immigration. Right, in like 2000, early 2010, 12, around that, there are about 6 million immigrants from poor countries to rich country. Now, by the time 2017, 18, the number has come down to about 4 million or less than that. Yeah, so that's how the economic environment has changed.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. So why suddenly countries became anti-growth?
Okay, first of all, the first reason is most of the countries now, they have become developed, right? So when you become developed to a certain level, when you become a rich country, it's quite difficult to grow some more, right? When you're already rich, right? So when your GDP per capita reach like 30, 40, 50,000 per annum, it's quite difficult to make the country grow again without putting in significant investment, or to leapfrog the technology, for example, from 3G, 3.5G, 4G to 5G or 5G plus. So that type of leapfrogging the technology. Without leapfrogging the technology, you cannot make the country grow, right? Without innovation, invention. So most of the developed countries, they are already at par with each other, right? Even China, US, Europe, they are already at par. So it's very difficult to overtake them a lot. Right, so that's why the growth has slowed down. Once you become developed, even Singapore, the growth rate is hovering around like 3-4%. But in UK and Europe is worse. It's less than, it's running around 2% or 3%. So because it's already developed, it's quite difficult to grow further. That's the first reason, right? So high growth is difficult to achieve. And so in order to achieve growth, I mean, it's not that the growth is no good. In order to achieve growth, you got to put in a lot more efforts to achieve that high growth after you reach a certain level, right? So in order to put in more effort, you need a lot of funding, a lot of budget. Yeah, which means once you put in a lot of budget into growth policies, you got to sacrifice a lot of other things. Yeah, that's why the growth policies are not popular. You have to sacrifice more and more. Yeah, that's why the growth policies are, not so popular. Just to give you another example, in Britain, the latest, Prime Minister before Rishi Sunak, before him, there's a Liz Truss who has been in government only for 44 days. Yes. And the policy that she is pushing is a pro-growth policy. Britain growing significantly. But in order to grow, she got to borrow a lot of money. She got to cut this, cut that. So she became extremely unpopular. So eventually she stayed in the office for only 44 days.
So why politicians also prefer spending rather than the growth initiatives?
Well, yeah, there are two reasons for this. The first one is the following the spending, take the budget and spend policy is always easier than trying to initiate growth policies. Because growth policies are difficult because you got to get the trade going, you got to get the foreign direct investments, right? You need to do for liberalization, you need to deregulate the market. So these are difficult initiatives because you got to set loads of new regulations. You got to make sure that you meet certain targets. Even if you think about FDIs, you got to make sure that okay, within this year you got to have how many billions of FDIs coming into Myanmar. So you need to meet certain targets. Take the budget and spend is the easiest of all the politicians. But you are given a budget, you just spend the budget. How difficult can it be, right? So spending and just spend is a lot easier than trying to earn money for the country. That's why in life also at the individual level also, right? It's easier to spend your money than earn your own money, right? So spending is easy. So politicians, typically most of them, they prefer the easy job rather than do a difficult job. That's the first reason. And the second reason got to do with the votes, right? Because if you do the pro-growth policies, you need to invest, right? Because only when you invest now, you can have a better income in the future, right? Only if you have a lot of investment, FDIs and all these things, people will be employed, Myanmar will become richer in the future. So it's for the future. Yeah, so, right, so if you invest, you need money for investment now to build roads, bridges, power plants, electricity, supplies, all these things. So that means we're quite poor, so we need budget items from elsewhere, right? So in terms of, not just talking about Myanmar, even if we talk about developed countries, right? In order to grow, you need to invest. Invest means you need to spend budget. Yeah, you need to invest from the budget. But then, which means you need to sacrifice other budget items like healthcare, like social welfare, social security. Yeah, that type of education, that type of, or elderly care especially. You need to cut down on these budgets. But when you think about votes, most of the voters are elderly people. Yeah, young people do not go and vote. So elderly will go and vote. So if you tell the elderly people that as a politician, you're going to cut down on their welfare, you're going to cut down on the medicines that we give them free, so they are not going to like you so much. As a result, you will not get elected. So as a result, you will not run the country. So, if the politicians want to get votes, he cannot show off a lot of pro-growth policies. Yeah, even though pro-growth policies are better for the country. Right? Because elder people will ask you, if you do pro-growth, okay, I lose my budget. So what am I supposed to gain? Right? You say, oh, next 5 years, we are going to benefit. Next year, 10 years, Myanmar will become richer or the country will become better, top of the world. But then the elderly will say, next 10 years, I'm not going to be around, I'll be dead. Yeah, so that's why that's the two reasons. Yeah, the first reason is spending is easier, pro-growth policies are more difficult to implement. The second one is you're going to lose votes if you do pro-growth so much.
Mm-hmm. So how does the country and consumer debt play a part of this?
Yeah, because these days, the high debts, a lot of countries are having high debts. even the developed countries. If you look at the G7, the group of seven developed industrialized countries, right? Even their private sector debt is about 30% of the GDP. Yeah, so which means if a country has lots of debt, it's very difficult to it's very difficult to borrow again, right? Because the country want to do a spending for development, spending for investment. If you don't have the budget, it's not enough. You got to borrow, right? If you already have loads of debt, it's quite difficult to borrow some more. Yeah, so that's why the debt having a high debt give you lesser options in terms of policies. Your policy options are limited because of the debt. That's why, and because investors also, they are very sensitive about debt, high debt ceilings, right? So when you have high debt, investors say, oh, any changes, any variation in your income is going to affect your interest rates and all these things, the financial markets, right? That's why when going back to Liz Truss, and once you want to do the growth policies, you want to borrow some more, then the investors hammer the UK market, and UK interest rate increase a lot, sterling pound exchange rate, sterling pound depreciated a lot. Yeah, so that's the disadvantage of having a high debt. That makes the policy options very limited.
So, what is the antidote to correct this kind of situation?
Yeah, antidote is, if you talk about antidote for the world, is for the other countries and, US and UK and the West and all the China. Even China, the growth rate has slowed down. It's only about expected less than 5% in 2023. For the past 20 years, China has been growing around 10% every year in terms of GDP per capita. Yeah, so, for the developed countries, it's for the IMF, World Bank, ADB, all these organizations, they will sort it out with them. So, they have their own developed economies and their own experts to sort it out. So I'll just talk about a little bit on the Myanmar. So in Myanmar, we become the poorest country in ASEAN in 2017. So, we have a lot to catch up. Our GDP per capita less than $2,000. Whereas in Thailand it's about 7,900 or 7,008. So average Thai is about five times richer than average Myanmar. So we got a lot to catch up. So there was a sensitivity that I did up in one of the other shows, where even if we grow twice as much as Thailand for the next 10 years, we'll still be behind Thailand. Yeah, so that's the issue. So we have a lot to do to catch up. So growth policies are definitely in need for Myanmar. We cannot just spend and spend. Our politicians cannot just spend and spend. Take the budget, try to squeeze the budget, try to get the government money as much as possible. And what do? They just spend. Right? So spend the budget, don't think about the growth. So we need to think about the growth. So that's the first thing. So which means if we agree that we are the poorest country and we need to grow a lot to catch up with other people, that's the first thing that we need to agree on. Right? Well, once we agree with that, that's a good start. Then we know that we can agree that because we need growth, we need to catch up, so we need growth. We need growth means we need growth-oriented policies. But Myanmar is a poor country, so we don't have abundance of money, right? So which means we want to grow policies and growth initiatives. We need to cut down from others areas of the budget and put the money into the growth areas, the areas that make the country grow. Yeah, so that is we need to make sacrifices, right? The existing current population has to make sacrifices so that we'll be able to catch up with other countries 5 years, 10 years down the road.
So Myanmar needs growth policies to catch up with other developing countries. Okay, that's very informative. So is there any last advice for our country, Myanmar?
Yeah, in the current world, the world only show respects, the whole world only show respect to the countries that either has money or power. Power means weapons. When the country has power, the country militarily very strong. So if you are weak in either area, you don't have money, you are poor, i.e. Right, just like in reality, right? If you're a poor person, right, you don't have power, you got bullied. In life also, that at the personal level. So at the country level, at the world level, also the same thing. Yeah, so the current population must plant the seeds of growth so that the future generation, we don't have to suffer the same as us. So what I'm trying to baseline is we need to we need to grow a lot so that in the future, people will not bully us.
So thank you very much for your explanation with the vivid example. So thank you again for your presence for this show.
Thank you.
You are watching MITV Special Talk Show Perspectives. Thanks for being with us.